What's happening, everybody? It is Sunday, and OwnersBox has their main slate covering the two-game Sunday NFL slate. So I want to do a little bit of a breakdown here for you guys. I built lineups in the Stochastic Sims as well as the contest generator, and going to go over my top projected lineup of the day, and then the players I'm getting the most exposure to at each position. So if you could do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you want to sign up at OwnersBox, use the link that we have below. You get up to a $500 bonus on your first deposit when you sign up there, but let's get into it. So only two games today, and that's going to lead to some very heavy stacking in the Sims here. And that is why we'll see the top overall projected lineup that I have for the day. It is a Lions and Chiefs stack, and it is a triple stack on one side and a quadruple stack on the other side. And also, if you guys aren't familiar with OwnersBox, it is SuperFlex, which means that we can play lineups with two quarterbacks and don't have to worry about any of the defenses. But that's why we've got lineups here with two quarterbacks, and that's why when we look at our QB exposure, it's going to add up to well over 100%. So Jared Goff here is stacked with Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. And then on the other side of the game with Patrick Mahomes, I shouldn't say the other side of the game, the other side of the lineup, we've got Patrick Mahomes paired with Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Kelce, Justin Watson, and Mecole Hardman. So everything in this lineup very, very well correlated, which is going to create lineups with a lot of upside, especially on a slate where there isn't a lot of pricing value. So you start to think like, all right, what can we do to maximize the ceiling of our lineups when there aren't going to be players who are ruled out that create better points per dollar value? And it's just playing players that are positively correlated together. We're seeing a lot of that in this lineup. And if you look through all the other lineups as well here that are projected towards the top of my simulated ROIs, and you'll see ones that are really heavy stacks. There's a lot of run backs, so game stacks, quarterbacks with a lot of pass catching options, all things that are good for finding upside. Now let's go ahead and look at some of the player exposures. We'll go position by position here, starting with the quarterbacks. And at QB, the QBs that we are getting the most of are Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield. So not quite as much Patrick Mahomes as I thought we might, just because he was in the top overall projected lineup. So I thought maybe that he would be alongside Jared Goff, the two QBs I was getting the most of. But I can also understand the standpoint of this is a slate that only has two games. There's not that much pricing value. And quarterback is one of the positions that, as much as it matters for real life, doesn't matter quite as much for fantasy. The difference between a top fantasy QB and a lower tier option fantasy quarterback is not nearly as big of a gap as, say, like a top wide receiver and a lower rung wide receiver. So we're getting overweight to Goff, overweight to Mayfield. And then even with Patrick Mahomes, about even with the field, slightly underweight to Josh Allen. But not anything like real crazy as far as underweight stances goes on quarterbacks, because when you could play two QBs in the super flex spot, that's not something that everybody does in all their lineups, but nearly all the lineups that play on OwnersBox do have a QB in the super flex spot. And with that being the case, you actually can, in certain circumstances, be overweight to every single quarterback on an individual slate. But anyway, quarterbacks, that's what we're looking at as far as exposures go. The ones that we're prioritizing are Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield, so stacks around those quarterbacks. Now at the running back spot, really getting to a bunch of James Cook. He's actually showing up in 4/5 of lineups, which here's where this really makes sense, because I wasn't getting very much of Josh Allen, right? That was the only quarterback I'm underweight to. And then if we're trying to figure out, well, if we want exposure to the Bills offense and it's not coming to Josh Allen, good solution here. We're getting to James Cook. If James Cook rushes for the touchdowns, well, guess what? That's going to come at the expense of the passing game. So Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, those guys wouldn't project or wouldn't play quite as well in a scenario where James Cook has a big game. So I like, from a correlation and just a lineup construction standpoint, the game theory of it, that James Cook is showing up in lineups here. And then rounding out the rest of my running back exposures, Rachaad White, Jahmyr Gibbs, Isaiah Pacheco, and then nothing else is a priority. Well underweight to David Montgomery is only in 6% of my top lineups. So let's go and check out the wide receivers now, and then we'll do tight ends, and then we'll get ready for the slate to start. Wide receivers, getting to Jameson Williams, Josh Reynolds, and Amon-Ra St. Brown a ton. So Khalif Raymond not expected to play today, which is going to really, really create for a tight wide receiving core for the Detroit Lions. And even though Sam Laporta is going to play, he didn't look especially healthy last week. He was only targeted a few times. So I really like building these Jared Goff stacks around Williams, Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They look like the three top overall wide receivers on the slate. Now the field is getting to Amon-Ra St. Brown at a pretty healthy clip, 45%. So about even with the field on him, but well overweight to Josh Reynolds and Jameson Williams, the two best punt wide receivers on the slate, in my opinion. Other players we're getting to here, Mecole Hardman, well overweight to him as well. He didn't have the best fantasy game last week, but he did have a lot of opportunity. He ran a lot of routes. He was on the field almost every play. So Mecole Hardman, sneaky play for a little bit of low ownership. You're only 24% of the field getting to Hardman. And yeah, I know that's 24% kind of seems like a lot for football, and it is for a 13-game slate, but for a 2-game slate, it's relatively contrarian. Chris Godwin, Mike Evans getting nearly identical exposure to them, and also makes sense. It would be a little bit overweight to each when you consider that Baker Mayfield is quarterback. We're building a lot of lineups around. And then Khalil Shakur is a value option that stands out because Gabe Davis is out, but one that I'm coming in underweight to the field to, and instead prioritizing getting to Mecole Hardman, Jamison Williams, and Josh Reynolds. Now let's check out the tight ends, and it's a pretty good tight end slate. We've got Cade Otton, Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, and I like getting underweight to the field on Laporta for this slate. We talked about it just a second ago about I didn't think he looked particularly healthy last week. Sure, he did score a touchdown, but his targets were down, his receptions were down. I do think we could attribute that to the fact that he's playing with a banged up knee. So I'd rather get to the Detroit Lions wide receivers than Laporta at tight end. So underweight to him. Travis Kelce, closer to even with the field and coming in overweight to Dalton Kincaid as well as Cade Otton. So that's a breakdown of the slate and the players that I'm getting to. If you guys found this content helpful, do me a favor and just like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you want to sign up for the NFL packages that we have at Stokastic.com, they do include the Sims tool. So you get an access to the contest generator. You can build all the lineups on the site. You can simulate them. And then in addition to that, you get the player projections, ownership projections, all that good stuff. So that's going to do it for me this week, guys. Good luck. We'll see you back here next week.